Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown or at Broadway, Douglas or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street, Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
A petition calling for the island to keep its gold service breast screening programme has garnered almost 3,000 signatures. It's been created by the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group after news that a proposal in the Department of Health and Social Care's mandate for Manx Care is calling for a decrease in the frequency of breast and cervical screening. It's a proposal that's not welcomed by the charity, with Chair Julie Stokes describing it as a sneaky move to save a few bob.
Well, it might be saving money, but it's certainly not going to be saving anybody's life. You know, the 2 yearly screening programmes in Europe are actually proven to have a 25 to 30% mortality reduction in women between the ages of 50 and 74 years. It just proves that early detection means less radical surgery, less expensive drugs, less hospital stays, less trauma for the patient and for their families. This has got to be taken into account. But I'm afraid that, DHSC and Public Health aren't doing that. They're looking at the bottom line. They're looking at a saving for now. And they're not really thinking about patients' health. I thought the Isle of Man was all about cancer prevention, catching cancer early. I thought that's what it was all about. No, it's not. No, it's not at all. I've been a volunteer fundraiser for the last 14 years. I have never seen such a backward step as this in all that time. I'm shocked and, like I said, horrified that, they're going to allow cancer to remain undetected for another 12 months. And that's basically what's happening. We're going to find those cancers at a much greater stage where they need far more intervention, where people's lives are at risk and their outcomes are far, far worse.
And it's not just Julie Stokes that upset about this move. Malcolm Clegg is a former surgeon who was part of the group that helped bring screening to the Isle of Man in 1998. He's also the chair of the Isle of Man Anti-Cancer Association, and he believes extending screening time from 2 years to 3 is illogical.
We know that tumours start very small. They grow slowly to start with, but accelerate as they get bigger. And that if a lady has a mammogram, which at the time that she has a mammogram may have a very small, undetectable tumour, and we're talking about millimetres, but in 2 years, that if that tumour is there and grows, will get to a certain size. If it's 3 years before that tumour is detected, does that have an adverse effect on patients' outcome? And although, as I say, there is a potential cost saving in extending the time interval, what we want is what's best for individual Manx people.
Do we have quite a few women on the island going for these screenings?
Across the UK and on the island, there's somewhere around 2/3 to 3/4 of people who are invited to attend turn up or accept their mammogram appointment. And this is another slight concern I have at this stage, is if Manx Care is going to send out a message that you don't need to have mammograms as often as before, it might make people feel and discourage them from coming forward, thinking that it can't matter that much anyway. And here we are as a charity trying to raise cancer awareness, trying to encourage ladies to come forward for cervical smears and for mammograms, and Manx Care possibly sending out messages that says it doesn't matter.
Well, one MHK has also taken to social media to share her concerns. Julie Edge, who herself was diagnosed with breast cancer following a screening, says the proposal shocked her and she's since been in contact with the Health Minister asking for a Tynwald vote on the decision.
It's critical in getting an early diagnosis, faster treatment, and people on the road to recovery and staying as healthy citizens in our society, able to continue to work. If you end up having to need further treatment, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, or even more radical, you're not actually being given the best opportunity of life. The Isle of Man, and I know it gets stated it's gold standard. Well, let's be gold standard in the Isle of Man. We're pumping millions of pounds into our health service. And if this is one service that can save lives, save them and reduce the costs of expensive treatments by doing it early, we should be doing it. Most of the world are doing 2 years. So I'm not prepared to allow the Isle of Man. We're an independent island. We have an independent health service. We do not have to follow UK practices. And this is one that I will fight tooth and nail on. I believe the Minister, and possibly the Chief Minister said it, nothing will impact the outcomes for patients. This is an impact that could affect the outcomes for patients. I've been a breast cancer patient myself. I was picked up early in 2 years. Like me and many other ladies that I've spoken to, we'd have gone to 3 years. The outcomes would have been different.
Have you spoken to any of the cancer associations on the island, or have any of them reached out to you since your post?
The 2 breast cancer charities have, and we're all of the same view that this is cost saving, but it's not going to save lives or give better outcomes for patients.
So, are there plans to push breast screening out from 2 to every 3 years? Or rather, could there be such moves in 12 months' time? The official word from Public Health says no change is recommended at this point in time. But a statement adds there's a clinical review of all cancer screening programmes in the next year. Could it appear in that? Here is John Moss.
All this has come out of the Manx Care Operating Plan in response to the Health Department mandate. This process is required by the Manx Care Act. After the plan appeared, the claim was made that come the start of next month, and following UK practice, breast screening at 2 yearly intervals and other screenings would be pushed out to every 3 years. Uproar followed with a petition started, and MHK Julie Edge, one of the first to cry foul. Another MHK, a former Health Minister, Rob Callister, wrote to the Chief Minister to demand that screening checks every 2 years, the so-called gold standard, be kept.
There's no point just shouting on social media unless you have a solution. And the solution is very clear, John. In accordance with Section 6 of the Government Department Act 1987, the Council of Ministers can direct the department. That is what I'm asking the Chief Minister. I'm asking for the Council of Ministers to ask the Department of Health and Social Care to look again at this mandated service, because once it comes into effect on the 1st of April 2025, Manx Care will be mandated, instructed by the department to carry out that will. And I'm asking the Council of Ministers and the Chief Minister to look again at this particular decision, given all of the hard work that's gone on in the background, not just from Manx Care, but also from the Manx Breast Cancer Support Group, and on behalf of every single woman on the Isle of Man aged over the age of 50 that needs to have these screenings in the years to come.
That from Rob Callister, which came this morning, but it was followed by a statement from the Director of Public Health, Dr. Matt Pryor, saying he wanted to make it clear that Public Health had not recommended changes to breast screening at this point in time. He added that a clinical review of all cancer screening programmes would take place over the next 12 months. Ms Edge is due to ask a question on the subject in tomorrow's Keys question paper.
Meanwhile, the Health and Social Care Minister has also told Manx Radio Today there are no plans to change cancer screening in the Isle of Man. That's despite it being outlined in the Manx Care Mandate document, which was issued by Claire Christian's department.
There are currently no recommendations or any supported recommendations to change the standards for cancer screening on the Isle of Man. And as it's been advised, I think by Public Health this afternoon, the Director of Public Health informed me that the Public Health have not recommended changes to the current cancer screening standards. But they will be doing a clinical review over the next 12 months.
And so why is that mentioned in the mandate then, that's something that could be reduced?
So it's in the mandate to basically signal that the review is taking place. Actually, there's part on page 5, there's part of the mandate which is exactly the same as it was in the last 2 iterations of the mandate.
And so I guess looking at the overall mandate in general then, we spoke to former Health Minister Laura Hooper last week, who said that the mandate was evidence of forthcoming horrific reduction in service level for people of the Isle of Man. Do you agree?
I don't agree with that statement. Both the Department and Manx Care acknowledge that there are challenges to delivering our healthcare services within budget, even with the additional 25 million made available in the budget for 2025-26. But the changes set out in the mandate and operating plan aim to modernise and make the services that we're delivering more efficient by moving them to the right place at the right time with the right person.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
An MHK has been invited to visit Ukraine after sharing a post online suggesting the war was engineered by the West and Kyiv is propped up by foreign support. Stu Peters' comments questioning the Western narrative have sparked debate on social media, with some accusing him of spreading Russian propaganda. English teacher Drew Boyd from Onchan has lived in Ukraine for the past 20 years.
I'm going back to Ukraine in April. If Stuart Peters would like to come to Kiev, I can, they talk about money being wasted. We can sit in my flat and in the evening and we can watch Russian drones flying into the city and he can see where the money goes because you can often see Patriot missiles hitting Russian drones that are flying into a city of 2 to 3 million. And this happens like 2-3 nights a week. My phone is still set where I get Ukrainian air alarms, so I know when my flat is in danger back in Kiev. And I get air raid warnings 3 times a day. And you think, well, it's okay for me. I'm a single guy. I'm a big boy. I can look after myself. But what about the old people? What about the kids? People on the Isle of Man worry about bangs in bonfire night for dogs and cats. Well, try living in Kiev for the last 3 years when like 3 or 4 nights a week, you've got Russian drones firing just randomly into populated areas. And the fact that people are blaming them, that people are mocking them, it's just despicable. It's utterly despicable. Come to Ukraine. When Trump and Vance were mocking Zelensky last week, Zelensky invited them to come to Kiev. And Vance replied, no, I don't need to. I've read this on Instagram, which I think says everything about where certain people get their information. For example, this article. It's shameful. It's shameful.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
And the good news is, in the air and in the sea around the Isle of Man, everything is on time at the airport and everything is on time at the port as well.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside. The island's telecoms regulator says its primary concern is making sure consumers have enough information about the switch-off of the island's copper network. The project's expected to be completed by 2029, as Amy Griffiths reports.
Manx Telecoms invested nearly £50 million into its fibre network since it was first announced in 2017. It's said to provide internet that's up to 10 times quicker than was previously available. The vast majority of the work is now said to have been completed, with over 90% of homes and businesses now able to access it. Manx Telecom says making the switch is really important because copper can no longer keep up with the speed and reliability needed in today's world. The switch-off is expected to be complete by 2029, although Manx Telecoms already face challenges securing planning approval for some of the necessary telegraph poles. It'll happen in zones, the first being Zones 1 and 2, which cover Foxdale, St John's and Kirkmichael. People living in each zone will be given 12 months' notice, and leaflets have already been distributed to households outlining why the move is being made. But the Communications and Utilities Regulatory Authority, or CURA, says its primary concern is the consumers who, for varying reasons, may not have enough information and support to be aware of their future loss of telecom services. It says it's working with community and third sector organisations to try and reach as many people as possible, and will also be writing to households in the near future to provide independent information, support and advice. Kira says it's been working with government, the Office of Fair Trading and other service providers to make sure people's needs and protection are kept at the heart of the process. Those relying on copper-dependent technology, such as care devices, lift lines, alarm lines or similar systems, are being asked to contact their service provider to discuss a tailored transition plan. If you need help to do that, you can contact Cura on 677 022 or by emailing enquiries@cura.im. More information is available at copperswitchoff.im.
Amy Griffiths reporting. The Infrastructure Minister, Michelle Hayward, insists local authorities were consulted over proposed changes. A number of boards have hit out in recent weeks describing the local government bill as inequitable and scary. Ms Hayward has been speaking with Phil Gorn.
It's an unfortunate element of timing that Mr Hooper had the amendment drafted up before he was invited to join the department, and so by the time it came to discussing it, he was in the department, but it was drawn up when he was a backbencher. Mr Hooper in particular is very passionate about local authorities making sure that they do what their constituents are expecting them to do, and they deliver on the services that they want to deliver on. The rest of the Local Government Amendments Act or bill, as you know, has been years in the making. It tidies up a number of things, and it was widely consulted on back on my time on the commissioners, and probably by you as minister at the time. So that bit is non-contentious, and I kind of reject the local authorities saying we didn't know anything about this bill. They collectively did. Maybe their collective memory is not quite as good as it should be in this case, but they were widely consulted at the time.
Wouldn't it have been better to wait until after the local authority elections were out of the way?
I think part of the problem with this bill is that because we keep going through election cycles and we don't nail it down, that when you get a new cohort of commissioners coming in, we will have to allow them then some time in order to catch up with where things are and what's going on. And I think that would delay progress. And so given that I already have expressions of interest, concern and comments from the existing commissioners, I'll work with them because that would be my quickest route. I know that they already understand what's going on. And so rather than foisting it onto new commissioners and expecting them to get up to speed, I want to move on ahead with this bill. It's been years in the making, and so I want to do that at some pace. But I'm comfortable that because everyone already knows about the clauses, that we can do that in time.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. Work is underway on a revamp of the airport's departure lounge. Ronaldsway's had a significant investment so it can improve the area for passengers. There'll be more seating, as well as charging areas and updates to the bar and cafe. Interim Airport Director Jeff Pugh has been telling Amy Griffiths more about it.
This will be really the first big redevelopment of the departure lounge since it was built in the mid-90s. It's been about, I think, 10 years or so since the existing Costa as it is now was developed. And so there will be a radical change that passengers will experience as they come through over the next few months.
A lot of people saying this is probably quite long overdue.
Yes, I'm sure that will be a sentiment that will be felt by a lot of the travelling public. We want to make the airport a more modern and pleasing environment when they pass through our airport. It's one of the first places that people will see when they arrive here, and it's the last thing they'll see when they leave. So we recognise that, we understand it. Phases 1 to 3 ostensibly are the phases that we're partnering up with Cater Leisure on. So those will be the Costa. Essentially, we're talking about the flooring in the Costa area, the seating, and then, of course, the changes to the Costa machines and the payment area and also the bar. So those are the first 3 phases. We're then going to move on to making further improvements down towards gate 4 and 5 at the far end of the departure lounge. We'll be replacing the flooring down there as well, giving the place a lick of paint, and also introducing a whole new range of seating as well. So we'll be significantly increasing the number of seating overall in the departure lounge, whether that's the Costa area, the remainder of the seating down at the far end, and indeed the holding lounge downstairs.
So how much is all of this costing?
The seating, the Costa improvements and the bar, obviously that is a project that we're sharing with Cater Leisure, and Cater Leisure are putting a significant investment in that. That's obviously their investment and not for us to discuss, but overall it's a significant investment. The airport itself will be spending another significant sum in the region of £100,000 on seating seating alone. That's not related to the Costa area. That's the additional seating that we're spending down at the far end of the departure lounge and in the holding lounge. So I think overall, this is a significant investment in the departure lounge, and one that we very much hope that passengers will appreciate as they travel through the airport.
The Central Club were the overall winners at this year's annual Young Farmers Concert at the Gaiety Theatre in Douglas. Runners-up were the Southern Club, with the Northern Young Farmers third, and the Eastern Club in fourth. Shortly after the results were announced, Simon Clark caught up with Caitlin McKeown, the chair of the Central Club.
How are you feeling?
Shocked, excited. I don't really know how to feel, to be honest. It's, crazy.
Yeah, but last year, you look at it, everyone was saying, oh, you could have took it last year,
Yeah.
and you ended up in the runner-up spot. This year, roles are reversed, and you've won it.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it is close every year, more or less, I think. Like, every club puts on a good show and a good concert and gives it a good, kick, and it's good, yeah.
Yeah, but a good all-round performance by the Central this year, and lots of youth to come up through the ranks too.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I think it's too many, but you need it, don't you? You won't be able to carry on with a club if there wasn't all these young ones keen to do it.
So much to do, isn't it? There's props, there's dancing to get done,
Yes.
there's bits to fit in, and of course time limits on it as well. Makeup to put on, much.
It takes a long time to put makeup on, tanning, but it's like it's such a big job, like the biggest. Yeah, it's the biggest. It's stressful, but it's worth it, obviously. Like, to any club, it's worth it, I think.
Yeah. And what about Carry On Cruise, and how did that come about?
Yeah, I was thinking of, like, around the world, and then we had, like, a bit of a meeting with, like, a few people that wanted to help and write and stuff, and we just bounced ideas off each other and came up with it.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Time for sport, here's Darren Timson.
Good evening. Starting with the 2026 Glasgow Commonwealth Games, the King is set to launch a revamped baton ceremony for the Games today. The Games, which will be held in Glasgow, will see a new structure for the famous baton relay, where each of the 76 Commonwealth countries will get their own baton to decorate and display in relays in their country. This will mean no formal passing of the baton and costly or polluting travel. King Charles will pass the first baton to the first baton bearer, Sir Chris Hoy, today on Commonwealth Day. Moving on, Isle of Man TT legends Michael Dunlop and Peter Hickman impressed at the Daytona 200 on Saturday. Hickman was the pick of the two, though, as a 14-time mountain course winner narrowly missed out on the podium in Florida. The Englishman finished fourth on his PHR Performance Triumph, 35 seconds off third. Dunlop, meanwhile, finished in the bank course in a respectable 9th place. In football, the Women's FA Cup final has been confirmed. Millwall will face Corinthians next Sunday after beating Onchan in a 5-3 goalfest. Corinthians, meanwhile, dominated Peel at Ballafletcher as they won 3-0 to make the final. Elsewhere, the men's FA Cup semi-finals have also been decided. Ayr, Russian, Foxtel and Union Mills have all made the last four. Mills will host Ayr while Foxtel travel to Russian. The ties will be played on Saturday, March the 22nd. In the Canada Life Premier League, Peel returned to winning ways with a 6-0 demolition of St John's, and Corinthians reclaimed second with a 2-0 win over Moran. In rugby, Douglas claimed an important away win in the Regional 2 North on Saturday. They beat Crewe and Nantwich 25-20. Vagabonds, meanwhile, were put away by Ormskirk in the County 3 ADM Lancs Cheshire. However, Vaggers ladies won their final home game of the season against Littleborough in the Women's NC2 North-South. They won 56-5.